Hello and welcome to today's episode, presented for Digitales TV. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into a day without immigrants, specifically those happening this coming Monday. We've got some news articles detailing participating businesses and the overall context, driving these demonstrations.
Interesting, isn't it? This whole concept of immigrants just collectively abstaining from work, school, and commerce for an entire day to really highlight their integral role in society.
Yeah, it's a bold move for sure. And it really makes you think, what would a day without those contributions actually look like?
Exactly. And this isn't even the first time this kind of protest has been organized. We saw something similar back in February 2017. It's a way to really kind of demonstrate that undeniable economic impact when immigrants aren't participating. And of course, it serves as a powerful platform to protest policies they see as harmful.
Right. And speaking of impact, we're seeing a wave of businesses, especially restaurants,
Mm.
here in the D.C. area choosing to close their doors on Monday in a show of solidarity.
Wow, that's significant. Closing down for it, especially for a smaller business, that can have real financial consequences. It demonstrates a deep commitment to the cause.
Absolutely. And many of these businesses are sharing some pretty personal stories about why they made this decision. Republic Cantina, for example, posted on Instagram saying, D.C. depends deeply on immigrants who work vital jobs in our local economy, pay taxes, and make the city a vibrant place to live.
They're making a direct link there between the economic contributions of immigrants and the very fabric of the city itself. That's a powerful message.
It is, and they're not alone.
Yeah.
We've got Pearl's Bagels, Hiraya, both in D.C., La Casita Pupusería, Tacos al Pariente, and Centrado Café Shop in Maryland. A pretty diverse group of businesses across different industries, all choosing to participate.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable. It really speaks to the pervasive nature of this issue. These aren't just isolated incidents. It's a sentiment echoed across various sectors, impacting businesses both big and small. And, it underscores that fact that immigrants are really woven into the fabric of our economy.
Yeah, Pearl's Bagels had a particularly striking quote. They said, "A day without immigrants is a day without bagels."
Oh, wow. So simple, yet so effective. It takes something as ubiquitous as a bagel and forces you to consider the often unseen hands behind it.
Right. And beyond the D.C. area, this movement is gaining traction in other parts of the country as well. In Minnesota, for example, businesses are also choosing to close their doors in solidarity.
That's interesting. It suggests a shared concern, a sense of unity that transcends geographical boundaries. It's not just a local issue, it's a national conversation.
Yeah, one story that really stood out to me was about Michelandia Bar and Grill in South St. Paul, Minnesota.
What's happening there?
Well, the owner, Alejandro Morales, has been talking about how his business has actually been negatively impacted due to this pervasive sense of fear.
Here, in what way?
He says both his employees and customers are afraid to come to the restaurant, worried about immigration enforcement, potential raids, and the consequences that can follow. It's creating this atmosphere of anxiety that's affecting his bottom line.
That's a sobering thought, a climate of fear so potent that it's impacting people's everyday lives and livelihoods.
Exactly. And Morales has actually had to reduce his operating hours because of this. And he's decided to close on Monday in solidarity with the Latin community. That has been so instrumental in supporting his business.
Wow, that's a courageous decision. He's essentially taking another financial hit to stand with his community, even while his business is already struggling. That speaks volumes about the depth of his commitment.
There's an estimated 8.3 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. workforce, which represents over 5%. Imagine the ripple effect if they all stopped working for a day.
Wow, that's a powerful statistic. It really puts the potential economic impact of this protest into perspective. And what's even more significant is that fear that Morales describes. It's not limited to undocumented individuals, it's permeating entire immigrant communities. This speaks to a larger issue of unease and uncertainty.
Right. It really highlights the human cost of these policies. It's easy to get lost in the statistics and the abstract debates. But Morales' story brings it home. This is about real people whose lives are being directly affected.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the human stories, behind the headlines. These aren't just abstract policy debates. They have real-world consequences for individuals, families, and entire communities.
This day without immigrants? It's a pretty bold statement, wouldn't you say? Do you think actions like this can actually influence policy change?
That's a great question. It's always tough to measure the direct impact of any single protest. But history has shown us that, collective action can be a powerful catalyst for change. These protests serve to raise awareness, spark dialogue, and apply pressure on policymakers. So whether or not they directly lead to policy shifts, they certainly contribute to the broader conversation surrounding immigration.
And how the public reacts is a big part of that, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. This protest aims to disrupt daily life, make people stop and think about the contributions of immigrants in a very tangible way. It's about fostering empathy and understanding challenging preconceived notions, and ultimately encouraging people to consider the human impact of these complex issues.
We've been focusing a lot on the restaurant industry, but are there other sectors that rely heavily on immigrant labor, where we might see a significant impact from this protest?
Oh, absolutely. Think about agriculture, construction, healthcare. These are just a few industries where immigrant labor plays a vital role. A day without immigrants could lead to disruptions in supply chains, delays in construction projects, and even potential shortages in essential services. The impact would be widespread and far-reaching, touching various aspects of our daily lives.
This whole conversation reminds me of how immigration has always been such a complex and at times contentious issue throughout U.S. history.
It certainly has. We've seen waves of immigration throughout our history, each bringing its own unique set of challenges and contributions. It's a topic that often intersects with economic anxieties, social identity, questions of national belonging.
Yeah, and it feels like those debates are even more heated in today's political climate.
There's no doubt about that. It's easy to get caught up in the rhetoric and lose sight of the human element. At the heart of this issue, it's important to remember that behind every statistic, every policy debate, there are real people with real stories like Alejandro Morales and countless others.
So connecting this back to the Day Without Immigrants protests, what do you think it tells us about the current state of the immigration debate in the U.S.?
I think it speaks to a sense of urgency, a feeling among many immigrants and their allies that their voices need to be heard, their contributions acknowledged, and their concerns addressed. They're willing to take a stand, even if it means economic sacrifice, to make their voices heard.
And for our listener, why should they care about this? What makes this day significant?
Well, on a practical level, our listener might experience some disruptions in their daily routine. Their favorite restaurant might be closed, certain services may be unavailable, or they might encounter longer wait times. It's meant to be disruptive to make the absence of immigrant labor felt.
It's a wake-up call in a way.
Exactly. But beyond those immediate inconveniences, it's an opportunity for our listener to reflect on the role immigrants play in their community and in the broader economy, to consider how their own lives are interconnected with the lives of immigrants, whether they realize it or not.
And to really think about the impact of policies that directly affect immigrant communities.
Yes, it's a chance to engage in a conversation that often gets oversimplified or reduced to sound bites, to move beyond generalizations and stereotypes and consider the individual stories and experiences that shape this complex issue.
Yeah, it's a chance to kind of step outside our own bubbles and try to understand this issue from different perspectives.
And ultimately, I think it's an invitation to consider what kind of society we want to live in, one that embraces diversity and recognizes contributions of all its members, or one that succumbs to fear and division.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listener walks away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that immigration isn't just an abstract political issue, it's a human issue. It's about people's lives, their families, their hopes and dreams, and yes, their fears. It's about recognizing that inherent dignity and worth of every individual, regardless of their immigration status.
Those stories deserve to be heard, understood, and considered as we grapple with these complex issues.
Absolutely. And a Day Without Immigrants is one way to kind of amplify those stories, to make them part of the national conversation in a way that can't be ignored.
So to bring this back to our listener, I'm left with a question for them to ponder. What does this day mean for you? And how does it shape your understanding of immigration's impact on your community?
Yeah, it's a question worth reflecting on. We often talk about immigration in broad strokes, but this day brings it home literally. It asks us to consider those tangible ways in which immigrants contribute to our daily lives and the potential consequences when those contributions are absent.
It makes you pause and think, what would my day look like without the contributions of immigrants? It's a powerful exercise in perspective.
It really is. And sometimes, those moments of disruption, of inconvenience, can be the most enlightening. They force us to confront our assumptions and recognize the interconnectedness of our lives.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into A Day Without Immigrants. It's been a fascinating exploration of a truly complex and timely issue.
It has, and I hope it's given our listeners some food for thought.
Don't forget to subscribe Digitales TV for more updates, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.